But when I'm on stage, the magic happens when I stop thinking and just go with it.
So you're doing exactly what you're meant to do. So Lisa Quam.
Yes.
I don't even know where to start because there's so much that we can go into. What really inspires me about you is the fact that you kind of reinvented yourself over these last 3 years by starting your business, Quamedy, your stand-up comedy business.
Yeah, so I think just for a little bit of backstory, I grew up, I didn't have the greatest household. It was pretty abusive. We moved around every 16 months to 2 years-ish. So always a new school, always a new situation. And so every time I moved somewhere new, I always had to reinvent myself because I would move from California to New York State, which are very different experiences. And then from New York State to Virginia, which is a completely different, it's like a whole different world. And then back to New York State for about a year and then to Wisconsin. And so I spent a lot of my time pretending, like I would pretend to be somebody that I wasn't, just to try and fit into a new school and a new environment. And I grew up watching Burnett. She was really my idol. And after her show, I would go in my closet and put on the costumes and recreate the skits. And so I spent a lot of my life kind of pretending to be somebody that I'm not, just to get by, just to be a people pleaser, just to make sure that I'm being good and perfect and always saying the right things to the right people.
And so how did that even start as a child?
It came from my parents. Mm-hmm. Yeah, our feelings were never validated. So if I was crying about something, it was, you don't need to be sad. You don't have anything to cry about. Or if I was mad, you don't have anything to be mad about. And so I never quite knew. And even to this day, sometimes I don't know if my feelings are actually valid. Because when you grow up in a situation of abuse and, not realizing that your children aren't robots, it's hard to move through life then. It just makes it a little bit more challenging to deal with people. And, I always wanted to make everybody happy. I'm very much a people pleaser. I'm a yes girl. I'll do, well, not quite so much anymore, but, I'll do a lot of things for a lot of people. And sometimes it's not because I want to, it's because I want to make sure that they're still going to like me.
That's a theme that's come up with so many people that I talk to in terms of people pleasing, feeling like they're not good enough for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
And where did that all stem from? So how many kids in your family?
I have an older sister and younger brother.
And did you feel or sense that was happening with them too?
A little, I know it a little bit. But I was the more sensitive child. I was way more sensitive than my brother and my sister. And so, my feelings would get hurt and I would cry, and those feelings were never really validated, which in hindsight, I feel like if they were, I would have been able to manage them better through life and just been able to, deal with, disappointments better and just to have more self-confidence overall.
And so it doesn't help having that and having to move so much.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So what was that like when you were finding yourself in a new school, in a new town? Did you use comedy? Is that where the...
Kind of, yes. So I would tell jokes, or I would mimic the teachers, and people would respond to that. And that was kind of my in. And then I also used humor to diffuse situations in my household. So if there was arguing, I would step in and say something funny to try and break up the situation. And so, yeah, I've kind of grown up my whole life, being funny, but I didn't realize what a gift it was until just recently.
Yeah. So tell me about the whole, I don't want to say fascination, but tell me about your love for Burnett.
Yes. Now that I'm an adult, when I was that age, I always dreamt that she was my mom. I really looked up to her. I And later in life, when I found out that she was a woman in the 60s who stood up for herself and made the producers like follow her contract, I admire her even more now. But it was more about like, they were almost like a family or an ensemble, and they all seemed to just work so well together and have so much fun along the way that, I remember my whole life, I've just wanted to be Carol Burnett.
Mm-hmm.
And so before COVID, my husband bought tickets to go see her in Milwaukee, and we were going to sit in one of the front rows, and I was so excited, and then COVID hit. And Carol Burnett is not a young person. And so it kept getting rescheduled and rescheduled and rescheduled. And so then right after I turned 50, about 2.5 years ago, we ended up going to see her in Milwaukee. And it was an amazing experience. And I was figuring out who she was picking on, or who the ushers were picking on to ask questions. And I figured it out, and the whole place was sold out except next to me. There were like 4 empty seats, and I scooted down to the end because that's the people that were getting called on. And I raised my hand, and they came over and put the microphone in my mouth, and I got to ask her a question.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, I did. Yeah. And I wanted to say something super profound, but it also felt so powerful to me in the moment that I was worried I would get emotional about it.
Yeah.
And so I said, Carol, I just turned 50, so if you had to go back and give yourself a piece of advice, what would you say? And she kind of laughed at me and thought about it, and then she was like, you know what, honey, I'll let you know when I get there.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah. And then
your husband happened to get a picture of you?
yeah, it was illegal we were not supposed to record it, but he did a little bit. Yeah, just because I wanted to save that moment for myself. And then I sent her a fan letter a few months later because during COVID, the day that I was supposed to see her, I had been filming these office staff meetings with my dogs during COVID as just kind of a way to do things and have some fun along the way. And so the day that I was supposed to see her, I had my husband take the curtains off the wall, and I dressed up in them. And so I talked about what she meant to me. And so I included like an image of that and kind of images of along the way and how much I admired her, and my favorite quote of hers, which is, once you have a dream, you've got to grab it and never let it go. And like 2 weeks later in the mail, I get a package from Carol Burnett that has a self-autographed with, Lisa, keep following your dream, Carol Burnett.
Oh my God.
And it was, I squealed. I think I might have laid on the floor, and I said to my husband, I need to change my will. I need to change my will. And he was like, I don't think other people are maybe going to think this is as special as you do, but it's one of my most prized possessions that I have.
It's the biggest full circle moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So prophetic, because you followed your dream after the age of 30. When was the decision made? So you moved to Wisconsin. How long?
When I was 12, so I started 7th grade.
And so in your adulthood, when did you make the decision, you know what, I'm going to go for it. My dream is to be a stand-up comic.
Yeah, so I every year on my birthday, I give myself a challenge. And so, I'd seen improv in the past, and it seemed interesting to me, so I signed up for an improv class. I'm not necessarily somebody who loves doing improv, but I think everybody should take it. And I also teach it a little bit too, because I think that the basis of improv can really help in any aspect of your life. It's helped me in my professional life, just being able to sit down and talk to anybody at any point about anything. But also it also helps with active listening, where when you're in an improv scene, you don't know where the scene is going to go. You don't know what somebody's going to say. And so you really have to pay attention and listen to be able to continue making the scene successful.
Right. You have to be fully present.
Yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh. That's a great idea to help people. So I'm trying to help people being on camera.
Yes.
And doing video.
That's right.
That's a really great suggestion to try. I've never tried improv.
Yeah, I think everybody should take an improv class. And so then when I turned 49, I made it the year of no fear. So the things that I was kind of afraid of, I wanted to do them. And so I'd always wanted to try stand-up comedy. and I'd been following Dina Nina. She's Lady Laughs Comedy here in Madison. And I just saw on Facebook that she had a level 1 improv class. And so I signed up for it and I took it. And she's such a wonderful human being, but she's also so generous with her joke ideas. And the class was very collaborative and encouraging and supportive. And at the end, we did, I don't know how many minutes we did, but I think we all did either a 3 or 5 minute set. And I was so nervous. I was so nervous. But once I got on that stage and got the microphone in my hand, I was like, this is where I belong.
You immediately felt it.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like, it clicked in.
It's like a spark. It's like magic to me. It's, I've always had a challenge, like getting too much into my head or thinking too much. But when I'm on stage, the magic happens when I stop thinking and just go with it.
So you're doing exactly what you're meant to do.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of gone about it my own way. I was older than most people who do stand-up comedy. It's a lot of very young people. Some of them don't have full-time jobs either. And so there's open mic nights all the time. And I used to go to them, but I don't really go to them as much anymore just because for me, I can get more feedback at home in my own mirror, when I laugh at myself than I can in front of comedians, because we're all out there trying new things. We're all worried about what we're going to do. We're all kind of writing when everybody else is up on stage. And so I'm not saying that they're not great for some people. I'm just saying that for me, they didn't necessarily work the way that I had hoped that they would.
Mm-hmm. Go back for a second. Talk to me about, was there ever a time before you did that, before you got into the improv, was there a moment or moments where you said to yourself, I don't know if I can do this, I'm too blank?
Sure, absolutely. I still move forward.
How did you do that?
I think I just had some sort of elevated self-confidence, where when I'm on stage, I feel like that's where I belong. There's just something about me that comes alive when I am given a microphone. And I actually also worked with Nancy Kelso from Kelso Coaching and Consulting. Yeah. I was having a lot of challenges at the beginning just with my confidence. And so I worked with her for a couple of months. And she really helped me kind of come up with things that I would do before I went on stage to make myself feel more comfortable. And yeah, that was also very helpful and valuable for me.
So do you have, like, if someone asked you, what's one suggestion you would give to someone who they struggle with camera confidence or putting themselves out there in that way?
I just think everybody's their own worst critic, right? And you listen back and you're like, does my voice really sound like that? Like how can other people stand to even hear me talking right now? Or, why is my foot sitting like that? Or why do I have that expression on my face right now? But, I think that people are too self-critical. I think that they're way harder on themselves than they actually need to be. And I also used to feel like everybody could get up and do stand-up comedy and be a creative writer. And it's only been in the last few weeks that I've really let that go because, I kept thinking this is a common thing. Everybody could do this, but I don't feel that way anymore. I feel like there are people that are very creative in a lot of different ways, but that doesn't mean that you can be a stand-up comedian.
And it comes naturally and it comes easily to you.
Yeah. And I had a role before that, I was public facing and, at our events, I would kind of joke around and be a little bit of the light of the morning event that we held. And, that was also really validating because people were responding to that. And so that kind of helped with my courage too of, oh my gosh, these people here are laughing at me. So I can't be that, I must have something in me that might work if I go up on stage and write some jokes.
Yeah. And so talk to me about starting over in a way at an age where we say, oh, I'm, if someone's over 40, over 50, over 60, and they say, oh, it's too late for me to get a new job. That's so inspiring to me because you think, oh, I've spent 20, 30 years and this lane and I'm going to switch lanes. That's scary to do. Going up on stage and following a dream when that's really daunting.
I think for me, so I started doing stand-up comedy when it was still COVID time. And so I was getting booked on some shows, but there was no audience. And, it's hard when you're up there kind of telling your jokes and there's one person in the audience. And so I did give it up for a little bit of time because I was like, I'm not going to do this if nobody is showing up. And then I literally, it was fall about 2 years ago, and I believe in connections to the universe, connections with other people, other things. And I literally heard someone say, it's now or never.
Oh my gosh.
It's now or never.
I love that.
And
I feel like I've had moments like that myself.
Where it's like, okay, I'm now 50, right? I'm 50 years old. And how much more time do I have to waste? Like, I have this dream, I have this passion. I don't want to be 60 and wishing that I had started doing something because fear held me back. I think fear has held me back a lot in my life. I think fear holds a lot of people back. And yeah, I just started, I did a lot of open mics at that point. I started getting booked on some shows. I started going to Comedy on State on Wednesday night. And when I was at Comedy on State, that is my favorite stage ever. The audience is just, I don't know, I just feel like I get the most joy back from the audience at Comedy on State. I mean, I've had that experience other times when I'm producing my own shows, but, when I heard that message from the universe, I am older, and so I wanted it to be a profession for me. I didn't want to just be like, oh, I'm going to go try and write some jokes. And so I really branded myself at that point. I created my name. I created a logo. My niece helped me with my website. And so made sure that the colors all coordinate together.
Yeah.
And then earlier this year, or actually late last year, I've been on shows, and I'm so grateful for that, but I didn't always like how they were run. Or I wish that there had been more representation on comedy shows. And so I thought, well, how hard can it be to produce my own shows? And it was just that sort of crazy self-confidence. But that has been a really unique aspect. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's very hard. I've had to cancel a couple of shows for low ticket sales, but those are the times where I feel like I should have really followed my intuition as well, in saying no to a show that I was not feeling like it was the right fit for me to do, maybe not the right day for me to do it. So yeah.
Okay, so is there a joke that you can share?
I have about 90 minutes of material that I've written about myself. Like one of my newer jokes, I have a couple newer jokes that I really like. And
Okay.
one is that now that I'm a certain age, I'm starting to get all of these invitations from funeral homes inviting me to have a lovely dinner and pre-plan my funeral.
Yes.
And I have not yet done that. And so I'm going to tell you tonight what I want to happen when I die. The first step is to call the best taxidermist in the state of Wisconsin because I want to be stuffed. But before I die, I'm going to pre-record all of these phrases. And then when it's time for my funeral, my casket will be closed and everybody will be mourning my incredible loss. And then I'll be brought in on a Roomba, zip tied to a Roomba. And so that I can greet all the guests that are there with all of these different phrases that I had pre-recorded, like, oh, Uncle Tim, that touch did not actually feel good. Why are you even here? Or like, Aunt Bertha, why do you always smell like fish? Just these funny things that I can then go up to people at my funeral and just be able to say to them. And I also think, like, what more fun could it be than to be, a spirit looking above and seeing me just zip tied to this Roomba running all around the funeral home.
Visual.
Yeah.
Just circling the room.
Yes. So.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. I mean, I have told my husband. I mean, it's. You might take this the wrong way, people, and I'm very sorry. But like, I I always think like people stuff their dogs, people stuff their
Oh
bears.
my gosh.
Like how come a human can't be stuffed?
I will never forget that.
Right.
Now. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's a visual.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Another thing that I remember you and I talking about recently was and now I think of it as a quote, but what you said was, I just got tired of hiding. I'm just tired of hiding.
Right.
And so putting yourself out there, doing comedy, coming to terms with this age, this time in life, there were other things going on. That was an undercurrent to all of this too. Yeah. Talk about that.
Yeah. So, growing up in the family that I did, perfection was the most important thing. So it was important in how you presented yourself to the world. We always had to be perfectly dressed, perfectly mannered, perfect everything. And when that's ingrained in you as a child, you bring that into your adulthood. And, when I started going up on comedy stages, I would say jokes about growing up, and I felt like I was being heard and laughed at. And they were partial truths. I think it really made me look at myself and what had been going on in my own self for a long time, where, I was looking perfect. I was looking put together. Nobody would have ever known that there was anything wrong with me. But I realized that I was really having a lot of eating challenges where, it kind of started as a pattern, and it's been going on my whole life. But the half of 2023, I was eating less and less and less and less. And so I was losing a lot of weight, and I was getting a lot of positive feedback about that too. People kept coming up to me and saying, "Oh my gosh, you look amazing. How are you doing this?" And I would say, "Oh, thank you so much." But in my head, I would think, if you only knew the pain that I'm in right now. And, I just started eating way less, and I was feeling horrible about everything. And my husband was noticing I wasn't taking care of myself. So in January, I made a doctor's appointment, and I went to the doctor, and I just said, I'm just not eating. I don't know what's going on. I feel fine. I'm very high functioning. I think everything is fine. I just need to figure out how to eat, because I was only eating a can of Progresso soup a day, and that was all I would eat. The doctor was worried about me. They took some blood tests that came back abnormal. They did a heart test that was a little bit abnormal, but not, not terrible. And so she was worried, and I just was like, but I'm going to be fine. Like, just tell me how I'm supposed to eat. Just tell me that, and I'll go read about it, and everything will be fine. But then they started talking about treatment for what they were describing as an eating disorder. And I was very hesitant for it because I was fine. I had all of these lists, and I really felt like I had control of the whole universe, because the way that I was controlling myself also meant that I could control all these outside things too.
So the word eating disorder didn't cross your brain until that point?
I mean, I know that I've had eating disorders at times in the past, but I've just gotten past them. But I also know that when I was talking to people, they would say things like, "Well, what kind of meals have you enjoyed?" And I would answer, "There's one meal that I remember really enjoying in my whole entire life." And I thought that was normal. And it was a mahi-mahi sandwich in Hawaii. So then I went, I went to a dietitian, and I was going to a couple more people. And, they really wanted me to go to treatment. They were talking inpatient, and I was like, I can't do inpatient. I can't just stop my life. And so I agreed to do outpatient treatment for about 14 weeks. And, when I started it, because I've always been such a perfectionist, my thought was, I'm going to start this treatment. I'm going to be the A+ student. I'm going to fill out all the papers exactly how I should be. And I'm going to get out of here in record time. And that's not what really happened. I really had to surrender my eating, my control. I had to surrender that and trust my care team, trust my treatment team. I had to trust my husband, when he would tell me that it was time to eat. I've never really known how much I should eat in my whole entire life. And so, even to this day, sometimes I'll look at him and be like, well, have I eaten enough? And so I still get that feedback from him because I'm still not, so I was in treatment from February until the end of May, which was about, again, 14 weeks. And I think it took me about 4 weeks to finally realize how sick I actually was. I was very, very, very sick, even though I didn't look like it on the outside. People have things going on that other people have no idea about.
Yep.
And I think that as women, we put so much emphasis on how we look, how much we weigh, how we present ourselves. Oh, I don't like this part of my body. And, I'm starting to learn to really love my body more and be grateful for the gifts that it's given me. I also still engage in eating disorder behaviors, but now I know that they're eating disorder behaviors, and I really try and do, we call it opposite action. So if I don't want to eat, if I really don't, I say I'm not hungry, I still will eat because it's time to eat.
Gosh, listening to you cheer me, I swear to God, I feel like I have to cry every time I'm with you.
I mean, it
touched me so much.
It was this year has been one of the most rewarding, but also painful years of my whole entire life. When I started treatment, I was so ashamed of myself. I was so embarrassed. And I didn't want to tell anybody. But I also felt so alone because I didn't even want to tell my daughter or my in-laws or any part of that part of my family. I don't have a relationship with the family that I was born into anymore. I haven't had a relationship with them for about 7 years now.
Oh.
But and there was one point where I just had to stop work. My treatment team said, you need to stop right now. You can't go back. You're too sick. And I needed to trust them. At first, I didn't know what to do because I had all these lists. I had all these appointments. I had all these things that I had to control.
Yeah, you had been working all this time too. You didn't stop working
I didn't
full-time.
stop working.
You were doing your comedy work.
Mm-hmm.
You had all that going on at the same time.
Right.
And then they said, you need to stop. So
yeah.
So then
So I stopped work.
Yeah.
And I didn't do as many comedy shows just because I didn't feel like I could. I was really lucky this year that I was invited to be part of the Athena Awards. So I did a presentation there, and I was in the treatment center that day. And I remember just being very emotional because I didn't know how I was going to talk about being a strong woman when I felt so weak. And God bless one of the women in treatment because she looked at me and said, well, can't you be both? Like, can't you feel strong in what you're saying, but also feel weak in how you're doing right now?
Wow.
And that really helped change my perspective of being able to, be up there and present and talk about my life in a humorous way and, be able to feel like I did a great job that night, despite the pain that was happening in the other part of my life.
Wow. That's exactly why I wanted to have you do this with me today, because you are another example of a visible woman, someone who is still getting out there, doing the thing, even when all this is going on at the same time.
Yes.
And just pushing through it and moving through it.
And, I think for me, part of my healing was slowly telling people about it. Me going for walks with friends and just sharing my pain with them and having their response not be, oh, well, you look fine. Like I always was like, well, I can't be that sick because I look fine. I look fine. And then, as I was talking with some really trusted friends, I realized how much my eating disorder had also isolated me. Like I'd very much isolated myself. And so by reaching out to these women and telling them their support meant the world to me. But also as women, I feel like everybody has something going on. Everybody is struggling with something. And the more that we can share our struggles with other people, the more that we can be seen and the more community we can grow together, because pretending to be perfect is exhausting.
Doesn't work anymore.
Yep. Like, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
Now that I do talk about it more, I feel less shame in myself. I don't know how to describe it. I don't want to say I feel more normal, but like by being in community with close women friends that I've made, I feel supported and loved in a way that I wouldn't have been. And I really think that comedy saved my life along the way too, because being on stage, I was able to tell those truths. And I think it got me to the point to be able to say, I have an eating disorder and I need help. I need treatment. I need a care team.
Yeah. The comedy was the starting point.
Right.
Being able to say just a little bit and then a little bit more. I remember I filmed one of your shows.
You did.
And
Yes. You were my first real show that I did. You were there and filmed it.
Yeah. And I remember those jokes and thinking, oh, she's sharing something personal. Like, she's not just kidding.
Right.
She's telling us something about her life that's serious, and she had us laugh. I remember that moment. I remember hearing those jokes. That was the start of it.
Yeah. Yes.
And to know now there's nothing to be ashamed of.
Right.
And you're not alone.
Right.
And you are supported. And we need to talk about this, whatever it is, for not only yourself, but for everybody else that you're helping that you don't even realize.
Right.
And to be able to just stay out there. So thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to the shows that you were doing. You were saying Comedy on State was your favorite place to go. Now you're producing your own shows.
Yes.
So what's that looking like now?
So I liked being booked on shows, and I still am being booked on a couple of other comedy shows, which I enjoy and appreciate. But one thing I noticed on shows that I was on, or if I saw shows that were happening, there wasn't a lot of representation. And so for me on my shows, I want to have diverse voices. I'm kind of diverse in comedy because I am 52. There aren't a lot of us out there. And, I also want to hold space and have a stage for transgender people, people of color, people with a different voice, because I feel like when you have a more well-rounded show, people pay attention better because there are different voices coming up and sharing their different types of jokes.
Yeah.
So on my shows, you'll generally see, at least some aspect of diversity on there, whether it's, somebody who is gay, or somebody who's trans, or somebody who's a different color, somebody who's younger than I am, somebody who's older than I am. I think that it just makes my shows more to me. That's one of the values that I have is, having representation and having different voices. And so when I do my shows, I don't have to say that to people necessarily, but I want to show them that it's important for me to have all different types of people on the stage.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, of course. So do you have something coming up?
I do. Yeah. So I have a show. It's the last Friday of October at Downrange Distilling.
Oh.
In Cottage Grove.
Oh, okay. So that's soon. Oh,
yeah,
good.
that's
okay.
soon. And so on that show, I'm hosting it. And then Charlie Kogis, who won Madison's Best Comedy, he won Madison's Best Comic a couple of years ago. So I'm excited for him. And then one of my favorite comics is David Schendlinger. He is probably in his 70s. Mid-70s.
Oh, that's great.
And I love his humor. He's one of those comics that's more of a slow build, but once people get it, they do not stop laughing. And he was actually a finalist in this year's Madison's Funniest Comic competition too.
Oh, okay.
So, and then I have Ashley Gradle on the show too, and I hope she doesn't mind me saying this, but she's transgender. And she's one of the funniest comics that's out there. So.
Oh my God, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last Friday of October.
Yes. Downrange Distilling in Cottage Grove. And people can find out about my shows on my website. So if they just search Quamedy, they'll find it.
Yeah, actually, for people who don't know, spell that out.
Oh, it's Quamedy.
Yeah. And so the website is quamedy.com. Or is it quamedy? wi.com.
I think my website is quamedy.com, but my email is quamedywi at gmail.com.
Okay.
But that's a good question. If people just look up Quamedy, they'll see me, they'll find
Yeah.
me.
I just love that name so much. It's so perfect.
I mean,
It's
my last name
genius.
is Quam.
I know. So genius.
What else could my name be?
Right? Right?
And then I have a show in 1909. It's the last Saturday of December, and 1909 has been so gracious to give me stage time there. And unfortunately, they're going out of business at the end of the year, which breaks my heart. But I'm so happy that I've been picked to be one of the last events that they have there.
Yeah.
So for that one, I'm only having a host, and then it's myself and another comic. So it'll be a smaller show, but it'll give us all more time to tell our own jokes.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Lisa. Quamedy, Quamedy.com, Lisa Quam. And seriously, thank you for sharing everything that you did.
No, thank you for being open to receiving what I had to say when we talked last week, and thank you for the space to be able to share it.
Yeah.
You know,
We need it. We need you.
Yeah.
We need to keep talking about it. So thank
Yes.
you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you. All right. We'll see you again next time.